Hi, and welcome to the Sunday Lunch Project Manager podcast for Sunday, the 9th of April 2023. This is your host, Nigel Creaser, and we've got part 2 today of my chat with Jon Quigley, the value transformation guy. Speak soon. So, as I stand here now, I'm recording this on Good Friday. Just a sunny day in the UK here. And in the last few weeks, what's been going on? I've been hacking around a little bit with the audio book, trying to get the AI narrated version of the audio book out to a number of different providers. Not managed to. My skills with audio isn't amazing. I need to do some tidying up, some cleaning up, and some it's a bit more effort on that. But it is available on Google Play, which I've gone through and edited it properly now. Cleaned that all up, and in theory it should be pretty good, as good as the AI can do it. I've got a copy also available on PayHip. I'm quite happy whichever one if you want to grab a copy, whichever you want really. I think PayHip I might get a bit more money, but if it's more convenient on Google Play, then jump along there. So jump along, have a look, see what you've found. And if you're not sure, I've got a little extract at the end of the show. So carry on listening, or just skip to your next podcast if you don't hear it. What else is going? Last couple of weeks I've had some interesting conversations speaking to Jen Santos from Brazil, talking about the management of events and big corporate events and similar such things, and the IT around that, which is a really fascinating area. It's always found with me when I go to a conference or a exhibition type thing, I always fancy behind the curtains, finding out what goes on there. So if you're the same as me, you'll find a little bit of a glimpse into some of the things you need to consider in there, and some of the language that I didn't know it was used, which is really interesting. I also interviewed Bob Cook and Phil Clampett, talking about servant leadership and beyond servant leadership, which again was a really fascinating conversation, because it is about the phrase servant leadership, and I've always struggled with it, so they kind of helped me with that, which was really good. And then this Tuesday I spoke to Laura Chattington, and we were talking about activating people's careers that's plateaued. She runs some masterclasses and some coaching services, but it's some really useful info actually for anyone who's out there. And I think with sometimes as a project manager, you can get on the grindstone of deliver the next project, deliver the next project, deliver the next project, deliver the next project, without looking at the next phase, which would be, well, where do I want to take my career? It's always that next exciting project that we get involved with, rather than us managing our careers going forward. Those are the main things that have been on. I'm on holiday next week, which I'm really looking forward to, and going to be chilling out in the Welsh coast. And for those who don't know, Wales is by England and not part of England. And I think that is really it. So enjoy this conversation with Jon. We always go down some rabbit holes, Jon and I, when we talk. It's fascinating talking about the supply chain and things like that, and how I've not, in the automotive industry, I've not been involved in any of that, and typically it's software with me, so occasionally I had some shipping issues with stuff coming from China on cabling, but the complexities of when you've got physical product and physical product being created as part of a project, really fascinating. So hope you enjoy that, and if you are celebrating over Easter or on holiday or whatever, I hope you have a fantastic time, and we'll speak again soon. Bye now. And I also think requirements change as well, without you knowing, and you look at the situation we are now, we're with COVID. Most cars aren't designed well with every single part to be sat in someone's drive for 18 months without being moved because of, they're not designed for that, are they? the requirement
No,
changed?
not usually. No, not usually.
So I know
they're expected
mine,
to be out on the road kind of periodically. Yeah.
yeah, mine wasn't, and
Me either.
yeah, so I had green stuff growing on it and things like that, and it was kind of like got it going, and then started up, kind of started okay, and went to move it, and it was like one hell of a noise from those seized brakes, and I ended up having new discs and stuff like that afterwards. But
Okay, so it were actually seized. It was not. Were they rusted over? Because sometimes they get.
I think they were already on the way out. To be fair,
Okay.
I think it just
Okay. And
didn't
you might
help
have
on the
forgotten because a year and a half away from it. Who's
Yeah.
going to remember?
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
it kind of so you think about those scenarios where actually when you design the vehicle, you don't design it to be sat there. Things change and it gets there, and actually
Yeah.
it's a perfectly reasonable expectation in these instances. Nowadays, you might actually maybe we're not designing cars to be parked on the drive, but probably I would imagine that the car design industry has changed that consideration because it's going to be, right, is this vehicle going to be used by a commuter every day?
Yeah.
And actually that isn't going to be common, is it? It's going to be, this
No.
going to be less common, should I say.
I would
So
think so.
we'll change
When
it.
you're thinking about the life cycle of the car, you look at the estimated miles per year,
Yeah.
and you're probably looking at an envelope, right? Of here's the minimum drive. The old lady that goes
Yeah.
to the grocery stores and church, that typical vehicle, and then the people who drive put in a lot of miles, and then you figure your part life cycle based on maybe some one of those numbers with some factor of margin,
Yeah.
and that'll be your design and your testing.
Yeah.
So, like you said, as our relationship with the car changes, it may be more public transportation, less miles in general. I think the average is like 15,000 a year usually. I think that's what the back of the thumb kind of estimate
Well,
is.
that's quite astounding because if you've got that kind of thing in the US and in the UK, where we're much closer, we move much less, and I think it's about 12 used to be the average. So it's quite interesting, and it's a similar average still, considering
Yeah. Wow.
the vastness of the two different places.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's what I understood it to be probably a few years back.
Yeah.
We violate it pretty badly, but my kid's in college and we go visit.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of, and then like you said, COVID kind of pulled us back from traveling. You work from home a lot more, and you don't drive 50 miles one way to a job. That's kind of helpful. So, once we've selected a supplier, those changes you can expect that, and you got to find a way to manage those things well, and that's going to be important in how we handle the project, no matter if it's a supplier base, well, anything that's external to our company. Obviously, if I can go down to the lab and say, can you change the software, and it has no depending consequences on manufacturing, other vehicle systems, other IT systems, then that's kind of easy to do. But if you have to tie it in with other systems, as many things do, like you can't just go write some code for a laptop or a desktop without understanding how the consequence of that change in the system is on the cloud and all the other ripple effect of that throughout everything that system is going to touch.
Yeah.
So I think that's just a fundamental project management thing.
Yeah, you're right, and I think when you think about it, you get in that situation as well with vehicles becoming the more and more integration with computing, with your voice and all those sort of things.
Yeah.
The more, every time I see a new computer ad on the telly, I sit there thinking, that's going to need good Wi-Fi. That's going to need a good mobile signal for that to be operating. And I know round by me it ain't great. In certain patches, there's bits where we can't play our music, and it gets really irritating in the dead zone that we drive through. A few of those, and you kind of look at some of the vehicles and you think, how long before it's going to have to be redundancy in that software so that it can operate without that digital connection.
Yeah,
and things
sort of
like
like airplanes.
Yeah. It's quite interesting. Just thinking about the sort of things with sort of supply chain. What would you say with your experience are the key things that you've put in place that kind of saved your ass. Do you know what I mean? Where you've had pieces of work where you a little bit of a war story, maybe, or that sort of thing, but or a positive one where you've been managing a project and there is a dependency on these suppliers and on these supply chains, and you've had a problem, and how have you got around it? And just give us a couple of examples of some of the tools and techniques used in doing it.
Well, sometimes we kind of talked about the material acquisition for prototype parts, and you can't get them from where you think you're going to get them, and then you have to go digging around to other lower tier suppliers, or one way or the other tier suppliers, either the next one down or the next one up, to try to acquire it, or something that's a substitution kind of part that might be equivalent enough to keep things moving. That's the substitution one's kind of sketchy, because in my experience, when they say it's a direct substitution IC, integrated circuit, or something like that, that's seldom the truth. There's some little nuance, something that's going to be different, and it might give you this, but at a cost of something that's is too high. So you can't really do that. If you know in advance enough, you can buy enough material. Like, for example, I had a customer, they said, I want 50 versions of a B part. And this was probably before the supply chain got all honked up. So I worked with the team. We said, okay, they want 50 pieces, and we're going to need some pieces, and then we're going to probably should have a buffer because they say they want 50, but in our experience, customers, what they say at that time versus what they say a few months later are going to be two different things. So we're going to go ahead and order 150 pieces, which is a lot more than we needed for our testing and for the customer. And it turns out we couldn't get parts, but we had enough to do our, what we call design verification, design validation to DVT. We had enough to do our DVT and still build them parts with these extra pieces for their exploration. So in that case, acquiring a little more than you think you're going to use, without being stupid about it, it helps. It's like anything else. It's like a schedule thing. I think I can do it in 2 weeks, but it's better to have 4,
Yeah. Contingency, the word of heresy, as people call it.
Yes. Or a little bit of, it's buffer. It's planning for a buffer, because things don't come off as perfect as you write them down on paper. And it's through no fault of anybody's. Things vary, and that's a fact.
Yeah.
The world is full of variation, and even if you have experience that this is always a week, that doesn't mean it will always be a week. So, So that's a pretty good one. Looking at other sources, and if you're lucky enough, plan a little bit more than you need, because of yield, because of loss, because your customer is going to come back and say, yeah, I think I need 20 more pieces of that. Those are probably some good standbys, I think.
So I suppose it's both of those are kind of contingency, different drivers of contingency, aren't they?
Yeah.
And I think it's good. It's one of the things that I don't know if you're the same. When I've had projects where I'll have a project manager working for me, and they come to me and they give me a project plan and it has no contingency in. Or if I've been asked to put together a plan and they say, well, let's take all the contingency out, and what's the happy path that we can do? And I kind of sit there scratching my head and go, if it hasn't got contingency in, it isn't a project schedule. Let's not use the word plan.
No.
It's not a project schedule, it's just a list of random dates.
It's a wish, and the truth is, what a friend of mine, Kim, he calls those kind of projects death marches, because there is no way to win this. If you have everything stacked end to end without some kind of variation to any way to account for the variation in the task conclusion dates, no.
Yeah, it's just you have no safety net at all, and
there's no wiggle room. There is no wiggle room. Yeah, so if there's no wiggle room, you can tell right off the bat it's going to be. You know what? Yeah, go ahead and do that. We're going to be late. I'll tell you right now, a year out, We're not going to be on time.
Yeah.
And we're probably going to be over budget too. Just because, because...
Well, because you'll be thrashing people with overtime to try and make those dates.
Yeah,
So your contingency becomes people's weekends and people's evenings,
holidays,
where you're paying them extra and holidays. Yeah.
And so you're paying them more, so it's costing you more, and you are not helping your people out. I mean, I don't know about you, but some of the most irritated times I've been in a project is when I've had to work over the holiday, and I knew 6 to 8 months before, maybe even 9, that there would have been a way to avoid it.
Yeah.
Or we should have just started replanning so that was not going to be the eventuality. You tell the executives, here's how this is going to go. And they're like, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's the Christmas holidays. Whenever I see a schedule and people put a schedule together and it's got work happening for the 3 weeks leading up to and in Christmas, it's kind of, no, assume productivity is 0 in those 3 weeks.
At least not 100%. Yeah, even not 100%.
I just say 0, and then that gives you contingency anyway. I assume people are not going to be as focused. People aren't going to be as on it as they were the 3 weeks before that.
Right. And rightfully so. If they have vacation time, what are you going to do? Tell them no? And then beginning of the year, you're going to tell them no also. You're going to tell them you can't carry over your vacation time, and you can't take it next year because of we have no carryover policy, and I need you on another project. So none of that is helpful.
No, it isn't. I think that the difficulty I find is sometimes people, it's whilst you can sit there and go, well, we might be able to, we should do this, should do that. It's kind of, well, should's a great word. And actually, it isn't about we should be able to make it, and we should be able to get people in, and we should be able to do that. It's kind of look at reality, look at what the real situation, what the real human beings that we're working with and dealing with are, and plan accordingly. And that will save a lot of challenges for everybody. I remember having a project where the other side, they were desperate to get it in. It was the 22nd of February was the date they desperately wanted, and I remember this vividly, because we spent many weeks and built good solid relationship with the customer. I was telling them, I will not make the 20. They wanted the 14th, and I told them I could make the 22nd, because we'd looked at it, we knew the stuff that was going on, knew the kind of risks, and I knew there was some stuff we weren't sure about. This was physical kind of stuff in contact centres and upgrades and things like that. And I'm like, I can, in as close as I can guarantee a date. 22nd I could guarantee. The 14th I won't even sign up to that, but we will try to bring it forward.
Yeah.
And that was the way I went with it. And it's one of those ones because it's one of the times when I was sensible enough to hold my guns and not get persuaded that we'll be all right. It was kind of no, definitely not.
Yeah, because it seems like only a week, right?
Yeah.
That's not how that works.
Exactly. Yeah. And actually, I think we could have done the 14th, but then something, if my memory serves me right, something happened, minor, that would have meant it wouldn't have been on the 14th, and it would have had to have been in the middle of the week, where therefore we couldn't, therefore we had to do it the following week. So it was that kind of, it was a kind of, it was around 13th, 14th, so it was around that sort of thing where the team, you had to do it at a weekend, you couldn't do it in working days, and that meant one minor thing jumped in a month. But we were nearly there.
Yeah,
and it was only a small piece of work, that as well. It was just the final throes of it, and politically they wanted to get the date there, and politically they wanted to be able to say that specific date, and it was kind of sometimes you got to take that as a project manager. I think with these sort of things of building in your contingency, and if you've got something as you've talked about here, where you've got a product where you've got say 50 of these products, you've got to go in your budget. We're going to buy 150, right? Great. Why are you buying 150? They only need 50 in the requirements document. Well, that's for this. You kind of you pay for it then, or you pay for it later, but you pay for it, and the thing is, when you pay for it up front, when you say, I'm going to go through a load of grief of giving the bad news to the customer, say, we said we thought we might be able to do it in 6 months. We can only do it. We need another 2 weeks or another month to do it. I know you're not happy. Have all the arguments and remonstrations 6 months ahead. Get past that and get on and deliver it.
Yeah.
The cost of doing that compared to the cost of trying to bring in something a month that you can't do, the cost of relationship, the cost of staff, the cost of money cost.
Yeah.
It's being able to explain to people, you pay for it now, you pay for it later.
Yeah.
And actually, if you pay for it now, agree now, you may have time to avoid it.
Yeah.
Because you've got that mindset of, right, we've now got some space to avoid that contingency. Let's work out how we can avoid that contingency. Whereas when you're got to deliver to a date, all you're focusing on is getting to that date, and you know that's already under pressure as well.
Yeah.
Whereas,
and then things, in my experience, when you have to deliver to that date, and that date is singular like that, that's when you see, I don't know if this is a self-preservation thing or if it's just a optimistic, the rose-colored glasses peeking through, but you see an estimate of a work package that says, yeah, we're done. We're through with testing. Maybe we haven't even started. We have seen no defect reports, so we're okay. But the fact is, you're not okay. You hadn't even begun testing. So you start judging signs that you might be on the right path, that cherry picking, right? It's confirmation bias. I see something that looks like it affirms what I want to have happen. So I'm just going to go with it. And then you find out after you either make the date and you deliver crap, something that's not great to the customer, or you miss the date and you have to go to the customer at 1 hour before its delivery and say, yeah, I'm going to need another month. And in their mind, if you tell me that and I'm your customer, I'm like, what the hell did this just pop up? How could this pop up? Yeah, today? Yeah. Today, you need a month? What happened 2 weeks ago or maybe a month back? Yeah, exactly.
Your watermelon projects, aren't they?
Yes, that's what they are. They're green on the outside, but if you take a little knife and scratch that thing, ouch, glowing red.
I can't remember where I heard that phrase. I just thought it was fantastic. It really summarised projects I've seen before now in different places. And I think the thing is you talk some of that kind of made me think, and obviously your verification and testing sort of background and expertise in that as well that's that point, isn't it, where you have phases of testing at the back end of your project, and what ends up happening is you go in and they kind of, we've got a problem in design. Oh yeah, we've had to redesign it. Okay, we've done a bit of prototype. We've had to come back. So we've slipped a couple of weeks. Oh, it's all right. That'll be okay. We'll compress testing a little bit, and then you get into dev and you kind of get a problem. You got to go around and kind of, why don't we parallel run that test with that test? And then, okay, so we'll be okay on that. And then you kind of go, and those parallel run tests, you've done something that turns up, and then, okay, so we're going to have to bring the final test in and overlap with, and you end up doing all of your phases of testing at the same time with the same people on the same environments.
And probably the only one set of hardware, which is not how testing is supposed to work. It's supposed to be, you do it throughout, so you learn as you go, and you start, you don't get this big of false defects reported as you reach the end, because you've had 10% here, 8% here, 20% here, defects reported along the line as you've iterated. Yeah, exactly. I saw somebody drew a great picture of this. They had a straight line, and they said, here's the development and here's the testing time. It was 2 line segments, right? And they said, and the next graphic had the development going a lot further. And then it had the testing line, a zigzag line, like it'd been smashed, crashed. And they're doing all that same length of line segment is just accordioned up in a smaller space.
Yeah, I've seen it happen.
Yeah, and that happens. It's pretty common. And the project manager has got to be aware of those things, because if you're not able to tell people that, the software is late or the hardware is late, and when you can't start the testing, and the testing has got to go through this window of time and these things. If you're not able to deliver those hard truths and manage expectations, then you're probably not in the right job. A project manager's got to be able to listen to bad news and not see it as bad news. It's just news, and they got to be able to find a way around it if possible. And if not, they got to be able to convey that outward to everybody that needs to hear that. Hey, here's a good book you might want to check out. It's called Double Speak.
That rings a bell.
I think is it Goldrat? Wrote something about mitigated speech. That's another word for it. But that book is pretty interesting because it describes these things that people do or they word things so softly that the sense of urgency is gone from it. And sometimes it's out of a fear of offending or hurting somebody's feelings, and sometimes it's self-preservation. I don't know what else it could be, but and these things are not going to be all that helpful for a project manager. You should be able to speak very clear, and it's already difficult enough to communicate and have people walk away understanding what you've said.
Yeah, I think it is. I think we've all been caught at times where you'll be sitting there writing your status report, and you're there thinking, someone's told me we've got a problem, but I think they're going to solve it next week. Do I escalate now and have a load of people running around and get too much help from senior management, which will slow the thing down and stop the person getting it done next week, or at least give me a lot more reports to write? Because I've seen it where and I've heard other people say it's quite often you will get a situation where you'll have something to deliver, and you go red, but what you don't get is help. What you get is extra reporting.
Yeah,
and I think it's a as an organizer, as a profession, I think incumbent on us and to be able to actually change that a little bit, to say, right, when a project manager has a problem with their project, they need help, not reporting. So they need someone to go in there, sit with them, help them solve the problem, bring in the red team. Quite often will come in to work out who's to blame or what the excuses might be. Yeah. Not always to come in and help solve the problem and give extra knowledge, hands, and experience. And it's difficult. It's difficult. I can understand, especially someone who's a junior project manager trying to deliver time, cost, quality. To sit there going, I don't want to raise this yet. We can work it out. We can get it done as I'm not meant to bring problems. I'm only meant to bring solutions.
Yeah, that's not. Yeah, what you're saying is true. Except for that, it should not be true that you don't bring your problems. In fact, for me, one of the very first things you should have in your project plan is an escalation path, and that includes escalation internally and escalation at your supply base, throughout your supply base, depending on things. And there's got to be a way of telegraphing a punch without actually saying, I need to escalate this, right? Just that middle stage. You don't go from green to flaming red. You go from green to, okay, we have a challenge. Actually, we have something that looks like it's going to cause us problems, but we're uncertain if it will or not. It's not good, for sure, and we need a little bit more time to ascertain the impact, if any. And that's an interim step, but you should have that in your back pocket, maybe even start telegraphing this to your escalation path, saying, we may not be making this because of these other reasons. The software is late, or the hardware is late, or...
It's easy to do a heads up, though, isn't it? And that's the thing. Is actually, I've done it before. It's where we've had situations where someone's coming through. I'll do a heads up to my management chain, going, heads up. Don't think it's going to be a problem. Think we'll be able to solve it, but just in case, this is for you to know and be aware of. And we may need some help next week, next day, whatever. And typically, and then if we do need that help, it's kind of that conversation. That door's already open. The conversation's there. You haven't incorrectly redeployed loads of the organisation's resources to solve a problem you haven't got, but you also haven't hidden the fact from someone.
Right. So they're not surprised a week later when you come to them and say, we need to escalate this.
But a week later, they've already been thinking about that heads up, going, well, if that's a problem, I've got Jeff over here and Mary over here. We could bring them into that and help them if it becomes a problem. Yeah. And generally they've got the time to do that planning and thinking rather than it's a problem now. What's the solution to do that?
That's right.
I think it's that double speak thing, as you say. It's sometimes being direct and saying we've got a problem. Is it's hard to do, but there's a Otherwise, you end up the other way. You end up doing it, and I think you'd love it. Actually, there's a podcast. It's the PM podcast, and it's Seth. I've forgotten his name. Forgotten his name. It's not Seth. It's something. Mixed him up with someone else. It's the PM podcast anyway, and he did an April Fool's podcast on blame management as part of the project management tooling. And it's about 20 minutes long. It's about identifying when there's a problem, who's to blame, or what are the potential candidates for blame, what we put in place to make sure it looks like they're the ones to blame for the project failure. And and actually, if it was written in the PM book, you'd read it and you'd be thinking, and it's structured the way they've done it, so well done.
You think it's a legitimate thing, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it's the same as, it talks about the same kind of flows as you would with risk management or change management, scope management, all that sort of thing. And it just, I haven't listened to it for a few years. I need to listen to it again, because I've actually, when you listen to it, and if you put your hand on your heart, you've heard people, you've seen people doing it, and I'm sure if you haven't done it yourself, you've had yourself thinking it before. There is some of the techniques.
How can I transfer this to somebody else? Because this is going to be crap. Yeah,
you're sitting there like Han Solo in Star Wars, going, "It's not my fault. It's not my fault." It's brilliant, and it's a really good PM podcast. It's been going. I don't know why I've got a blank on his name. Cornelius Fieschner. Cornelius Fieschner. For some reason, I was mixing him up with Seth Shostak, who is a scientist at the SETI Institute, who's on another podcast to listen to.
Cool. I'll check it out.
Cornelius, he's I think he's probably one of the PM podcasts that's been around for the longest.
I'll send you something I wrote on Hope Project Management that you might find a little humorous too.
Okay.
I'll send that.
Probably a winging a prayer sort of thing, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Most people would really get a chuckle out of it and they're like, "Yeah, that's kind of cool." And, yeah, that's the way it is.
Yeah, most humor comes from a little bit of realism, doesn't it?
Yeah, a little dark realism, like not yes,
exactly. So, I'm just thinking we're just ticking up, coming up to the hour sort of time from when we started recording. What? If you were going to talk to a project manager, new project manager, or even an experienced project manager who's looking to having to use a supply chain of some description for their particular project, what I think I can guess some of the things we've probably talked about, but what things maybe we haven't talked about would you talk about? Maybe the top 3 things that you think about what they would need to have in place to help them get the best experience of having to deal with a supply chain.
I'd say the first one is you need to be included with the procurement people throughout the selection process. The second is identify metrics and milestones throughout your project and make sure that you have a common understanding of that with your supplier. When you say, "I need a C part on this date," make sure they understand what a C-level part looks like. Yeah. Because that, or whatever you call that level of part. Make sure that
when you say C-level, are you talking about quality?
I'm talking about it would be a part that's between a pure prototype part and a part that's off of production. For example, a C-level part would be maybe the PC boards are off of production processes. Or maybe they're somewhat production processy. The housing would be off of some kind of non-production related tool.
Yeah,
or it might be a soft tool that mimics the hard tool or something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
So whatever your qualifications are, the real important thing is whatever your company thinks that part should look like. Make sure you talk with your part of the supplier discussions saying this is what this part looks like, which means you're probably going to have engineers and quality assurance engineers in there as well talking about it. But you need to be part of those discussions, if nothing more than to understand that we all have a common view of what we mean when we say this, right? Yeah. And things like that are key to your project throughout the supplier involvement with the development effort. And then you seriously need to have some sort of checklist of the requirements that you're expecting that customer, that supplier to deliver to. And then you should have some sort of action in place to confirm or refute that list of things. Now, often it looks like a set of requirements, right? It could be a requirements document or a set of different, here's a hardware requirement, here's a software requirements document, here's some manufacturing, or here's a testing thing. Something, those artifacts, you should have a list of things that are in the contract. Now, a lot of that's going to be from procurement. But my experience is the procurement folks kind of miss some of that. The one they're mostly concerned with is the contract closed to some degree, right? Maybe their artifacts have been delivered and it looks like the manufacturing line works, so we're done. That's not necessarily true. In order to close the project out, the project manager needs to know more than just the procurement details are closed out. I need to understand, do I have all the software pieces that are supposed to be, or all the hardware pieces in here, or supporting documentation if that was expected? What about aftermarket tools to test this thing if it fails in the field and I need to run some tests? I'll have the part taken from the dealer and shipped to this test facility to check it out to see if it truly was a failed part. Is that part of the contractual obligations that I need to make sure are accounted for? So that's going to be another one, that checklist of the how do I know I'm done?
Yeah.
Right. So those are going to be the big things, I think.
Yeah, brilliant. That's superb. So thank you very much, Jon, for coming on and having a chat with us again. It's been a fascinating digging into a realm that is a little bit alien to me. Although not as alien as I thought it was when I but there is still some, there are more commonalities than I thought there would be on some of the things I've done. If people want to get hold of you, talk more, find out something, grab one of your books or anything, what's the best way to get in touch with you and so forth?
You can email me at jon.quigley@valuetransform.com. And I'd appreciate a follow of Value Transformation on LinkedIn. For anybody that listens to this, you can ping me there too.
Cool. Brilliant. All right, and Jon, in which case, thank you very much for being on the show, and have a fantastic rest of your evening.
Thank you, Nigel, and you also.
I'll try my hardest. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. And as I mentioned earlier on, if you carry on listening to the end today, you'll hear a little excerpt of the intro from my book, Project Manager Productivity Hacks, AI narrated audio, which is available at, well, if you go to nigelcreaser.com/hacks audio, all lowercase, you can get it from Google Play or from Payhip if you fancy grabbing a copy. Otherwise, look after yourself. See you soon. Bye. So this is my final wrap up. Every week you're going to hear this. You're going to get bored of it, but you can always click next podcast if so. If you have enjoyed it, if you listened to this podcast to the end of this show and you think that was great, I'd love to be able to help Nige out. There are loads of ways you can do it. The first and obvious way is to share the podcast. Send it out to people. If you know colleagues and friends who'd benefit from it, you think they'd enjoy it, just send them the link. Grab one of the links, or send them to www.nigelcreaser.com/podcasts. That's www.nigelcreaser.com/podcasts, and that will push them over to a Linktree link, and it's got all of the different ways they can consume the podcast. If you are feeling generous and have a big bag of cash, you could grab a copy of one of my books. Obviously, they're available in all the usual places, in print and digital. Again, jump on the website, www.nigelcreaser.com/shop, and that will give you a list of all the different ways that you can contribute and grab copies of the book. Also got links to all my guests' books on there as well, where I get a little bit of a kickback from them. If you are of a sporting mind, I have a number through doing some of my judo and running antics. I've managed to secure a few affiliate links and affiliates there as well. So in there, somewhere in the sponsors page, there's links to those as well. So clicking onto those and grabbing if you're looking to get super fit, then that would be fabulous as well, and I get a little kickback from those. I have a Patreon account. It's patreon.com/sundaylunchpm. So again, you can ping something in there, buy me a coffee or whatever. And finally, obviously the most important is coming back, listen again, because the more of you that come back, the more visibility I get, because there's more times that it's downloaded and all the SEO works and things like that. So yeah, that's it. So if you can help me out, I would be much appreciated. If you can't, don't worry about it. Thank you very much. Cheers now. Bye.
Well, it's goodbye from me, Nigel Creaser, and it's goodbye from him, the Sunday Lunch PM. Goodbye.
Introduction. Hi, and welcome to Project Manager Productivity Hacks. Why write another book on productivity hacks? Are there not enough of them already? The trigger was my interview with Sarah M. Hoban for my podcast, the Sunday Lunch Project Manager Podcast. Plug. Find out more at www.nigelcreaser.com/Sarah M. Hoban. We talked about improving productivity for project managers, and during the conversation I recalled that a while ago I started a blog post in which I plan to share some ideas that I have used in my career to improve my productivity and get out of the office that little bit earlier. Over the years I have shared these with others, and almost every time I received a positive and enthusiastic response. Having rekindled the idea, I sat down and noted 11 hacks, tips, shortcuts, whatever you want to call them, that I have used over the years. Why 11? Well, it's one more than 10. This book goes up to 11. One for the Spinal Tap fans. I see productivity as remarkably similar to an exercise program. We all start off with good intentions, and some of the changes work great for us and others don't. Some changes stick and become part of our daily life, whereas others are just a real chore. Even the ones we found that work well for us and are straightforward to implement can, under certain circumstances, end up being dropped by us. Sometimes this happens consciously, and sometimes little by little over time. Whether building healthier habits or improving our productivity, it's not just a case of making the changes, and we are done. It takes repeated work. If you find them hard to implement, then they may not be for you in your current situation. If you start using them and end up letting them drift, then start again. Improving our productivity is something many of us strive to achieve, aiming for some kind of efficiency nirvana. Let me tell you, it ain't gonna happen. Perfection is a myth. Give yourself a break. It's a bit like yoga. You can't win at yoga. No matter how bendy you get, you can always be bendier. That's the same with personal productivity. You can't win at productivity. You can always be productivier.
Ed, is that a word?
I have not always been able to apply these hacks successfully, but that is not a reflection of the hacks themselves. It is more about my ability to stick with them even though I know they work. One last point, as with your fitness regime, trying to make loads of changes at once can spell disaster. I recommend that once you have a read of these hacks, choose one that excites you, maybe not excites but seems to resonate, and have a go at it. Once it is second nature to you, move on to the next one that spoke to you. If you find that the first one was not for you, then bin it. Choose another and try that one out, then rinse and repeat. So on with the hacks.